After everything Trump did, why did about 35% of Muslims in the United States vote for Donald Trump? Ani Zonneveld of Muslims for Progressive Values breaks it all down for us. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Our old friend Ani Zonneveld, the founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values, mpvusa.org is the website. It's also the Twitter handle, MPVUSA, or Ani Zonneveld, ANIZONNEVELD. And Ani, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us again. I understand that about 30% of American Muslims voted for Trump. What's going on in your community there?
They're not in my community, I can tell you that. They're not progressive, that's for sure.
There you go.
Well, looking back about 15 years or so, American Muslims are conservative at the heart of it because they are not for LGBT rights, they are not for women's reproductive rights, they are not for egalitarian values, progressive values, right? Inherently so. And they tend to also be business owners, and so for them, hanging on to the dollar is more important than the rights, economic rights, and social justice rights for the rest of their fellow citizens. So it really comes from a very selfish perspective. And some of these are the older generation that tend to be more conservative, and they sort of bring their conservative values from wherever their home country is to the United States. So that's sort of like the historical background. And since
for that 30%.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I think it's 35. So it's actually higher than that. Yeah. But since Obama, there was a shift to the Democratic Party. And so I think now, I don't, what's remarkable, Tom, is that about 12% voted for Trump in the first election, and it went up to more than 30% in this election. So, and this is, after the Muslim ban and all this demonizing of Muslims in general, et cetera. It's really, I don't know how people can wrap their head around it. Yeah.
We're seeing the United States shifting toward the religious right. Certainly, the Supreme Court is shifting toward. I'm not sure that all of America is, but we've got now a whole bunch of hardcore right-wing Catholics on the church, and as we saw recently, in this case where they said that Governor Cuomo cannot close churches for public health purposes, which is bizarre to me. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre to me. And Amy Barrett is saying that, this is because the founders wouldn't have liked this. Well, the capital of the United States from 1790 until 1800 was Philadelphia. In 1793, Philadelphia had a terrible yellow fever epidemic. They didn't realize it was caused by mosquitoes back then. They just knew it happened in the summer. And a lot of the members of Congress fled. George Washington left town. And then it recurred 3 years later in 1796, and both the city of Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania imposed a quarantine on large chunks of downtown Philadelphia, just literally ordered people to evacuate. Leave your house, leave town, come back when the fall happens, when the leaves fall off the trees. And nobody who signed the Constitution, nobody who signed the Declaration of Independence stood up and said, oh, this is a violation of our freedoms. I mean, they're just so wrong, these right-wingers. But in any case, I get from, reading your newsletter and keeping track of what's going on over at Muslims for Progressive Values that kind of ideology and some of those same strategies that are used by Christian and Catholic right-wingers in the United States are now being used by some conservative Muslims, and that we're seeing, this trend with the Supreme Court and everything, and the Religious Freedom Reformation Act. That can you respond to that? Can you riff on that?
Yeah, totally. And as a Muslim organization, we are very much in tune with theology and how theocracy is a clear path to a failed state. We address this issue in the Muslim majority countries all the time, and the human rights abuses, the economic rights, etc., as you were speaking to earlier on, and the fact that we are going down the same trajectory in the United States is really troublesome, in how they've used the Religious Freedom Reformation Act to justify discrimination in the name of religion, and have the Supreme Court's position in that decision to say that congregations can this policy of disallowing congregations to come together for religious purpose trumps or that's a terrible word to use, but overrides public health reasons, and it's really quite appalling. Number one, and number two, the conservative Muslims have applauded this decision as well, and so what we're seeing MPV starting to see is how the Muslim community is starting to borrow a lot of the modus operandi of the Christian right, and also using Religious Reformation Act to justify their particular religious and discriminating belief systems. And so there's one particular case was the female genital mutilation cutting in Detroit, and where there were federal charges against a doctor that actually did this illegal practice after office hours. And two of the girls that were cut were from Detroit, and two of the girls that were cut from Minnesota, from Ilhan Omar's district, and from Rashida's district. And the judge threw it out for whatever particular reasons that I'll address in a minute. But this too, they were trying to use, the doctor who's Muslim was trying to use RFRA, Religious Freedom Reformation Act, to justify female genital mutilation and cutting as a religious right, and when actually it has nothing to do with religion. So that's sort of how that's being utilized, which we really need to pay attention to. Doctors are now, people in the medical field under Trump are allowed to deny services based on if it contradicts their religious beliefs. So if someone LGBT comes into the office, or if someone wants a birth control pill, these medical providers can deny services because if they feel it contradicts their religious values. This is just ridiculous. How is this any different from Taliban? Come on, people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I remember all the pictures of those ISIS pickup trucks with the guys with the giant flags and the assault rifles, and I was getting deja vu as I was watching these Trump trains. But it seems like the Americans are learning from them. Yeah, Americans are learning from this. Ani, we have about 2 minutes left. I know that this is not all unique to the United States. Macron and France have. France is, since the French Revolution, has been very much about being a secular state. What's going on there?
Yeah, what's going on is that they're really starting to ramp up they're finally starting to address the issue of radicalism within their community. It's very difficult as a progressive Muslim. We've been working with Muslims there for many years, for about 10 years, and there's progressive mosques there. But, you're very much, like here in the United States, trapped between the between the conservative radical Muslim community and the non-Muslim community that really puts on a lot of pressure on reforming, et cetera, et cetera. So the government, Macron's tone is very condescending about Muslims in general or Islam in general, but the fact is, we're trying to reform from within, but it's a very difficult climate. The beheading of the teacher was appalling. And so it's, sandwiched between those two extremes. And, of course, Macron's pandering to Le Pen, which is the right-wing candidate. So we're not in a very good position. So this whole human rights perspective of Islam is still a challenge for us, even though we've been working in this realm for 13 years. But it's still, getting that word out. There is a human rights rooted interpretation of Islam. This is the kind of work that we're doing in Kenya, how we're reforming the Sharia court there to make it more women's rights compliant. People don't know that, But that's the kind of work that we do, and that's the kind of work that we're going to be talking about, celebration of life, which I'm happy that you're going to be attending.